Well, thank you so much, Jake, for joining me. I'm
Absolutely.
Rinda Emick, and I'm excited to have Jake here with me. He's going to talk a little bit about what he's been doing. I have been following him on social media, and I'm loving his content. I'm loving watching him get more and more into the industrial investing space. So, Jake, thank you so much for joining me. I want to first ask a little bit about your background. Like, what have you done prior to real estate investing? And maybe if there's anything you still do outside of real estate investing now.
Yeah. Well, one, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed getting to talk with you over the last few months since we connected, and hopefully it turns into some more deals.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
but yeah, I grew up in Tulsa and started immediately. I wasn't very good at college. I could have been good if I tried, but after my sophomore year, I left and I moved to Colorado, which that's where you're at, right, Rinda?
Yep.
You're in Colorado? Okay. So I worked horses when I was 19 and 20. I sold cars actually when I was 17 and 18, and then left when I was 19, saved up enough to pay for my college. And then I had we were running hot shots and random whatever businesses me and my brothers could get our hands on just to help pay for school while we were there. And then
nice.
Moved to Colorado, worked horses for a little bit. And while I was up there, I ran into a guy that ran a oil and gas equity group and had built and exited about 4 companies at the time. He offered me a job after he was out of a non-compete. That's why I have like all the oil field equipment, and all my offices is still from back in the day. But so I went and worked for him from Colorado right after that for about 3 years and did nothing but development. And then so I developed kind of Southwest Kansas. We put an office in there, and then I officed out of like Liberal and Garden City for a little bit, kind of close up to where you're at.
Yeah.
West Texas and then East Texas. So just essentially was an account manager. But I got in with a couple of guys that were controlling most of the work in Kansas. And while I was doing that, during kind of right before COVID and right during COVID when oil took a negative dive, I had started a trash company kind of on a whim. Like I came up with the idea on Tuesday. I bought my first truck, I think 10 containers on Friday. And then I had a guy hired by, I think, month 4 or 5. So I was running them. I would leave Sunday for an oil field route, like to go meet with customers. I would schedule my dumpsters to be dropped off Saturday evening and then picked up either Wednesday or Thursday. And I had all my day rentals set so that I could leave, do oil field, and come back, pick them up. And
wow.
Again.
Nice.
But that was actually how I or kind of organically got into real estate. Was we were dropping off dumpsters, and then if the drivers saw it was getting full of household trash, then we would offer to buy the house. So if someone was cleaning out their house to sell it. And then what I did is I got in with a bunch of investors intentionally that were buying up a lot of houses and other buildings in Tulsa. And then I geotagged every dumpster and attached it to the investors. So I could look and I could pull up a map and look and see where every investor was buying at in town. And then I kind of just kept following the bigger guys. And then I started buying next to them. So
dang,
that was kind of how I got into real estate. The partners, I have 2 partners, Will and Sam, on all my industrial buildings. Me and Sam are a lot alike in that we think similar. We're kind of like run and gun style. So we hop in the truck a lot. A lot of times we just find vacant buildings, cold call.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like we would have a ton more systems set up than we do right now. But we've been essentially buying. Our goal was to buy 1 industrial building a month, which we've maintained that now for about 6 or 7 months.
Nice.
And that's harder than it sounds. Houses are, relatively easy once you kind of get in the rhythm of it. People know you're buying them. You should start getting referrals. And it kind of depends on, which ones you want to pick at a certain point, at least where we're at. It's not as competitive as other surrounding markets. But on the buildings, in order to contract 1 and close 1 a month, and then lease, and then we're leasing them ourselves. So I'm handling the leasing. That takes a lot more work, I think, than doing, 2 or 3 houses a month or 3 or 5 houses a month or whatever, depending on how big the projects are. So anyway, that's kind of how through my 20s. I'm 29 now. So that was over a course of about 9 years. I sold the trash company, the first one, and then I didn't have to sign a non-compete. So I just exited the last one, October of last year. And that was a good exit, but I've just taken that and then pushed that all into more buildings. So
Nice.
yeah.
How genius is that though, to take a route like a trash route and a business like that and use that as a stepping stone to get into real estate investing? Like,
Yeah, it was different because
it's genius.
yeah, I think I kind of like, if guys are trying to figure out how to do a service business, I don't know that I would recommend trash as much in this city now, but that's a great, like, the economies of scale work really well within that, and then you can get connected with a ton of people. So I've actually told a few other guys that were kind of different reasons, be like, well, if you start that up with the intent of selling it, you can get into real estate. Now, I used to tell people that. Now I'm like, if you just focus on real estate, you can just do real estate. So forget the trash company. In my head, I thought that I had to stair step into it, and I didn't have to. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So you didn't actually have any background in real estate then prior to that, or
No, I
okay.
had no background in real estate. When I was buying, but this is probably the difference between here and Colorado, because I was buying houses that were 15 to 30 grand, and I
Mhm.
put 30 to 35 grand into them. They'd appraise around 140 to 160, and then I could pull another 20 on the back end on a refi or something like that, and then move it into more deals. So that type of housing market isn't common in the United States. Oklahoma has a really low cost of living.
Mhm.
So still a lot of the houses that I buy are, sub 50, 70 grand. I have some nicer ones in different parts of town, but that's kind of the bread and butter. If you can be in one for less than 110, 115, it's a 3.2 or a 4.1 or 4.2, something like that. They work well here. So.
And so are you still doing any of the single family stuff? I mean, as you're building out this industrial space?
I'm doing some flips, but I'm not
Okay.
pushing single family. I've held on to most everything. Well, I say that I'm selling, I think, 4 or 5 homes right now. I've got 4 listed, and I've got a few that I'm selling to investors. But right now, my whole focus is just going to be on commercial industrial. And so I'm tapering out of single family as of right now. Just because I like where people don't sleep. So, it's like I have a duplex that I bought probably like 5 years ago, and I've been up since I got up at 1:15 this morning, but I got a call at about 1:30 this morning, and they were like, "Hey, our water tank busted," and I don't have property management on all of my old houses. I do on a lot of the newer ones, but some of the old ones that I've just bought in my own name and all that, I was like, I'll still manage them. And so that's the first time I've got a service call in probably over a year and a half or 2 years. And I was like, man, at 1:30 in the morning. And then that's just like a reminder of I like leasing to businesses.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I only slept about 3 hours last night. So
Oh my
I'm
word.
talking slower.
Oh my gosh, it's like the life of an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
especially ones that have the real drive and hustle. It's like sometimes it's just like that. So then getting into the industrial investing,
Yeah.
you started into this, and what was your first goal? Like what were you
Yeah.
on a mission to achieve in that investing space?
As far as goals, if a lot of guys set I want to have this much assets under management, or I want to have this much cash flow. My immediate goal, which is going to sound crazy, but my immediate goal was to be in the next 4 years was to have 100,000 of passive income per month. And
Nice.
so that's a really high goal. But if you reverse engineer, which is something I do often, or at least look at the time I'm spending towards things, when I reverse engineered it, this was the quickest route that I could see. We have some mobile home parks. Those are good as well if you buy them right. A lot of guys buy them way too expensive. But industrial was, and it's funny because actually the bigger you go in industrial, the better the deal is, even though it's
Oh,
more
right.
risky. So
Interesting.
like we're closing on a building in on Monday actually that's 70,000 square feet. It's on 20 acres, but that building itself, it has 9 cranes in it. It's 3 buildings. It's one large building that's 450 foot long by 60. The next one's 450 by 48, and then there's a separate 12,000 square foot building. If we got in a bind, I mean, we'll have interest only on that for 2 years. But say we were like, say the payment's 8,000 a month, or just to say 10,000 even, just for numbers' sake. If we were like, man, we haven't been able to lease this 70,000 square foot building. All right, well, let's just lease the 12,000 square foot separate, and we could probably cover our note just off the 12,000 alone.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, the more flexibility you have in the deals, the larger the buildings, even though they're more expensive, you can cut, divide, you can split it up 3, 4, 5 different ways. You could have a fab shop on one end with a temporary wall, fab shop on the other end. You could have an office in the middle that's just leasing the office with the yard behind it. This one has a fenced in, high fence, 6 acres, and the rest is with the building. And then it has outdoor cranes as well. So you can lease the outdoor cranes with the yard separate. You can lease the office with the 5 yards. You can start splitting it all up. And so that's one of the things when I was kind of reverse engineering where I was trying to get to, at least by the time I was really like 35, was the bigger the deals I can start doing, the quicker that can kind of turn around. So
the quicker you'll get there, yeah.
Yeah. And the first one we did, or the first deal we did, was December 2022. It was an 18,000 square foot building. A really meaningful deal to me just because of the seller and a personal relationship that I had with him. And, that one we leased while it was under contract. So we bought it on like Friday at 3:00, and they were moving in Friday at 5:00, and we already had a security deposit. And that was one where I knew the seller and I knew the tenant as well. Both were friends. And so that worked really well. They're still in there. Great tenant, awesome guy. But, I never hear from him. I've probably talked to him maybe 6 or 7 months ago. So it's the same thing kind of with the trash company, where the more dumpsters that I would buy, the more my top line improved, the more leverage I could use from local banks. And so the economies of scale worked really well. So the more of these that we get leased up, really the first deal is the riskiest. And then the second deal is a little bit less risky. There's a little bit less. And then you kind of have the economies of scale to play into it. And, because now we have 2 of our recent acquisitions are vacant, but the other buildings can carry those 2 in the meantime. So that's why, like, a lot of guys will get into industrial that maybe have, say a lot of guys seems like they jump into it maybe too early. I'm not sure, but they'll have, maybe 15 or 20 or 30 houses. And they're like, well, I'm making $3,500 or $4,000 passive a month. And they jump into a building and their mortgage is, $6,100, but they don't have enough reserves set aside or something like that a month. And then they're like, well, this thing sat empty for 8 months. So I just lost pretty much, 3/4 of my profit for the year because I was having to take my single family and, Peter to pay Paul. So that I would say we had a little bit of favor on that deal because we were able to lease it the same day. So we didn't have any loss. We didn't have to do any reno to the building. So there's just a lot of different scenarios within it that I like. So
Yeah, and how how versatile it is. Like you can obviously, that's a pretty significant difference from like a single family investment standpoint where, single family, you really just have either putting a family in there or, a tenant or a short term or a midterm. Like, it's really kind of your options, rent by room, that's about how it goes. But with something like industrial or these commercial spaces, like you have, like you mentioned, like this crane, the yard, the office, like you have all these different routes that you can go and kind of pivot on if something isn't working, which is really fascinating. And it sounds like so much to chew, right? Like it's like 70,000 square feet of a building. Like what in the world? That is like just, so up there to somebody who doesn't have experience with that. Which is really cool to hear. So congratulations on that. I'm loving your social media a ton that you're putting more out there for people to see, because it really is taking us through like this journey of what you're
Yeah.
doing, how you're finding deals, putting it out there that you're looking for these deals. And it's really neat. It's really neat to watch.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, it was a short learning curve, right? Because we bought the first one in December 22, and then we're coming up on, I think, our 7th or 8th deal so far, because we went going into 2023. We didn't do our first deal. It took us. We had 3 deals where we weren't confident enough to close on them. We had everything lined up to close, and we were like, I just don't know if this is right. Looking back, a couple of those that we contracted early on, we were trying to kind of move into the industrial. I'm glad we didn't buy. And so, especially 2 deals, I'm really glad we didn't buy them, because on paper they look great. If you looked at it from anywhere in the country and you looked at the price per square foot that we were buying them at, it looked awesome. But we didn't have kind of our criteria met at the time of like what we were looking for in functionality, or even, overhead door height, eave height, types of concrete, what can handle, zoning preferences, that kind of stuff. So now we have it a little bit more narrowed down, so then we're able to target that specific type of building. But yeah, social media has driven actually a lot of it. So, are you familiar with who Matt Larson is?
Oh, the name sounds familiar, but
He's up in Illinois. So Matt built he got up to about 450 homes in about a 24-month period. Just a go-getter. He gets up about the same time as me and Sam do, around like 4:15, and he's just going at it. Now he has like a virtual wholesaling business and all that. He was the one. I went up to Illinois and I did a course with him, or it was just a day. It was like 4 hours long. He was the one that essentially explained, if you look at all my Facebook posts, maybe hopefully not too many people see this. I'm just kidding. Let anybody see it. But the way that I structure my Facebook post are after how he has essentially, I guess, figured out the algorithm of how Facebook works.
Okay. Yeah.
So, one takeaway is, you're probably gonna do this now afterwards, but if you go look at my posts over just since I met with Matt, which would have been 5 weeks ago now, is if the Facebook post doesn't take off in the first 10 minutes, you delete it and you change your first sentence.
Oh, that's a good tip right there.
But that's what's helped drive a lot of the Facebook interaction. Is there's a ton more information on how to structure the Facebook post, but all of mine have a similar flow, a similar length, similar pictures. And he went through about 2.5 hours. And what's funny is Matt actually doesn't have a massive following, but Matt's interaction is insane. So if he posts something, it's immediately the likes are skyrocketing. He only has, I think, 8,000 or 9,000 followers on Facebook. When he did that event, he had it was 100 people only, and it sold out in an hour.
Wow.
And so most people would have, sub 10,000 followers, probably wouldn't fill a 100-person event. But what he does is he actually deletes people that don't interact. He removes, if he's I don't know who that is, or they don't interact. And so he has essentially, you ever seen when people have 60,000 or 70,000 followers and they post a reel, but their views are 112?
Yeah. That's 3 likes.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah. Well, Facebook won't push out your post if you're not getting actual proper interaction. And so if you start getting proper interaction, then it pushes it to more eyes, because it wants to capture more eyes, and it wants to keep people locked in on Facebook. And so changing that, I get quite a bit of leads from Facebook.
I was going to say, you have to be getting, I feel because definitely your content is, and again, you're not at this mass following yet, but I feel like your content is definitely it's intriguing to me. So I'm you have to be you're putting it out there a lot about what you're looking for, and you have to be getting some leads from Facebook at this point, I would imagine.
Yeah. I haven't actually tracked it to a T, but I would say probably 3 or 4 out of 10 deals that get sent to me are through Facebook. and I
Nice.
closed 2 of the industrial deals from Facebook. So,
Oh, that's awesome.
a lot of times people are like, well, I don't want to post and it may look dorky. And most of the time it's just people thinking about their family. Like they're like, I
I
think
know.
this, I
Yeah,
think
like,
this, or,
yeah, what's
whatever.
my
And
kind of thing?
I just don't care. Like, I'm just
Yeah.
like, if you don't like it, I don't care. And because I'm like, if I put one free Facebook post on that leads me to a deal, like say I buy a deal that cash flows, 2,500, $3,000 a month, then why would I not be posting
Mm-hmm.
like at least once, twice, 3 times a week if I get that type of interaction? Like when I put up, I'm looking for a building, I'll usually within probably 3 hours have 10 to 15 buildings sent to me, and probably only 1 or 2 are actually like worth looking at.
Mm-hmm.
But the first time I did that, I remember I tracked it. First time I did that, I had 42 buildings sent to me within 24 hours. And I was like, holy cow, this is ridiculous. Because I was like, we're not paying for marketing or anything right now. Because I think if we did, I don't think that with the 3-man crew that we have, I don't think that we could keep up with it right
Mm-hmm.
now. Now, if we put some systems in place, which that's what Will is really, really good at. Will is like an operations systems junkie, opposite of me and
Nice.
Sam. Sam's an engineer by trade, but he doesn't want to be in front of a computer. I don't really either, even though I force myself to do it because it's necessary. But yeah, it's been. I guess it'd be interesting to track. It'd be interesting to track over a decade, like the monetization of Facebook through real estate leads, because like Pineda, I know his numbers are about around his numbers of where what he pulls in from the monetization from Facebook and Instagram a year, and it would shock you.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a reason that maybe he pushes social even more than trying to find deals now.
That's
It's just quicker.
interesting.
So
Yeah.
quicker and a lot less headache.
Yeah. I mean, and even in traditional, like, having my background in traditional real estate,
Mhm.
it's really funny there in a lot of the bigger cities. I'm in a really rural area, where I'm at, but in bigger cities, a lot of traditional real estate agents are sometimes they're not even listing in MLS. They're just putting on Facebook, and you're
Yep.
like, they get a listing. It's like it's going into Facebook, for
Yep.
sale. Like here's a house for sale, and it's
Yep.
working. Like it's incredible. Like it is working. Social media is absolutely. I mean, it is huge and it's very, very powerful.
Yeah.
It's funny. My husband, I have a lot of kids and I have young kids, and he's like, I don't want them on social media, and I kind
Yeah.
of feel the same. I get conflicted by that, but I'm like, when it comes to business, like you've got to be on there. Like I need to get better for sure, but I could
I
tell,
think you're great.
oh, thanks. I
Yeah.
think what I love about too your content, what you're doing is like you're like putting out there like what you're looking for, but then you're
Mhm.
also showing like, okay, now here, we've got some contracts out. We've met with sellers, like we've done
Yeah.
this, like, and now we're under contract on another one. And so it's the difference of like just putting out what you need versus like
Mhm.
putting out what you need and then bringing people on the journey of where you're going. And then like, oh, hey, I put out this need, I got some leads, and here's where I'm at. I'm under contract. And
Yeah.
I think that that's the difference maker. And I mean, I can see that being you continuing to progress really well down that path.
Yeah. Thank you. One thing that kind of like what you're talking about, one thing that helped is whenever I first started trying to post, I've been tracking like the interactions as like of each post because I have it on the business profile, whatever.
Yeah.
And the interactions have jumped tremendously over pretty much the last 90 days or so as I've been more consistent with posting. But whenever I first started trying to post, and actually a guy told me this, is he was like, if you try and post through the lens in which you think you need to post, it'll mess it up. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, if it's not your voice, people know it. Because he's like, if people know how you talk, but your posts don't sound like you, then they just think you're trying to sell something,
Yeah.
So,
did AI write that post?
yeah. And that's actually because like if you use AI to write posts, a lot of times the interaction's horrible.
Yeah.
Because Facebook can flag it. It knows
Yeah.
that it wasn't personally written. So it's just funny because you never would think about like writing a post with your voice. Like you would just think, oh, I'm just gonna write a post. It doesn't matter. Like one thing I do is I can't write a post on a computer. Like I
Huh.
cannot type it on a computer because it feels like an email. Like when I'm typing on an email, I'm very professional. Like, and I have like a set structure of how I do
So it
everything.
changes your tune. Yeah.
Yeah, but if I'm on my
That's
phone,
interesting.
I just text I just type like I'm texting, like I'm talking.
Yeah. Like to
And I'll
your,
even
yeah,
sometimes just do like I'll just talk the post in, and then I'll go back and fix. I'm not great at spelling, but I'll go back and fix
fix, yes.
everything, and then just throw emojis in or something, and then I break it all down. But
Well,
um,
Jake, did you think you were coming for a social media lesson for us today?
no, it's just that's what's fresh on my mind because
Dropping
that was
bombs.
literally
No,
like
it's so
5 weeks
great.
ago, and I've
Yeah.
just been kind of testing it, and it's worked really well. So
Yeah. I love that.
um, I was on a call earlier with a guy that he sent me a deal, and he was like, "Dude, I followed you for 4 years, but I just now saw your stuff in the last like 3 months." And I was like,
Dang.
"What?" And it's because it's starting to push it towards
Yeah.
people. So yeah, I didn't know we were going to talk about social, but it's something
No.
I've actually been like focused on over the last month or so. So I've learned a lot on it, but yeah.
Yeah. No, and yeah, it's so good. I mean, you dropped it like a really great bomb right there. Like I really hope I can get some people to come in and watch that because that is really, really great. And then speaking of it, so like help me understand the difference in the buy boxes. Like the
Mhm.
buy box for you, like especially how you're kind of mentioning you're glad you didn't buy those other two,
Yeah.
right? Because you guys have learned so much. So looking back at those, and obviously you've refined your buy box and
Mhm.
what that looks like. And that's a constant thing, right? As you grow as an
Yes.
investor and your team grows, like that continues to change. But what's the buy box look like, the difference between single family, multifamily versus like the industrial space? What are you looking for?
In all three, or just in
Just in
industrial, or
industrial, yeah. Like what
yeah.
are you more so looking for in that?
So I'll use the one of the first deals as an example that we ended up not going through with, and I try not to post that we busted contracts or anything like that on Facebook, just because a lot of times brokers kind of look at that and be like, he may contract something, or they
Mhm.
may think you're wholesaling, or you still need to raise money for it or something like that. So after we busted the first couple, um, I don't think we've terminated a contract since I think June last year. So the
Nice.
last 5 or 6 properties that we bought that were buildings, I think. Yeah, we've just closed on because we kind of got that set to where we knew what we are looking for. The first deal that I busted, it was 13,000 square feet. We were only buying it for $365,000. It was west of downtown Tulsa. So what's that per foot? I'm gonna look real
I was
quick.
gonna say, so the numbers seem like it
Right.
would have.
So that's $28 a foot. So pretty much anything, Class C will trade in a rough condition around here around 45 to 50 a foot. Um, so, and maybe we could have flipped that. I don't know, but I doubt it because it's still for lease right now.
Mm,
So, um, what I did on that one was I actually installed. It was a 90-day close, but I said, "Hey guys," I said, "I know you guys have had this building for a long time. For 30 days, I want a marketing period," which is kind of
ooh,
frowned upon a little bit from certain brokers. But this was like a sour building that a lawyer in town owned it. He owns about, well, I won't say exactly. He owns a lot of stuff. And this was one that he had just had empty for a long time. And so maybe it was a 60. It was either 60 or 90-day contract, but the first 30 days was inspection/marketing. So I went in first week, had pictures taken, got it up, listed it, and I showed it probably 30, 35 times in the first 3 weeks and didn't get
wow.
a single person that was like, "Oh, this will work." And I was like, "Man, this is so cheap." I was leasing it at $4 a foot. So I think it was $4 a foot, which is like really low lease rate, for especially for that much space. And one, but the building was kind of old. The slab was it was busted. It had real bad angles to it, but there was no parking. The overhead doors were only 8 foot tall, and there was very little yard space. So total parking was maybe you could squeeze 5 or 6 cars, but if you have a 13,000 square foot building, most likely you're going to have at least 10 to 12 employees, so they would be parked on the street. Then it was like, okay, we'll get a forklift in, it'll fit through the 8 foot door, but even pulling a truck in was really tight because they had pillars right behind it. It wasn't freestanding,
Oh, okay.
and so everything was real tight, and it would have been like a constant shuffle. And then once you got in it, this is like a no brainer, but the slab was kind of so uneven that a forklift probably would catch on certain points. We were like, we can fix that, no problem. And so we kind of budgeted that into it, thought we were buying it cheap enough. But after showing it that many times, people didn't even know we were buying buildings at that point. And so then all of a sudden everyone's like, man, they're buying buildings, they're leasing, because we were putting up for lease, building for lease. So people just automatically assumed we owned it. So I got so many leads off of that, but I was very clear with that brokerage. And we don't usually deal with realtors or brokers as far as buying. We're direct to seller. We have a very narrowed avatar. And on that specific deal, you know, it was like day 28. I had a good relationship with the broker that was involved on it, still do. Called him and I said, this thing won't lease. I just can't, like, I don't even have a maybe. And he's like, yeah, we've been trying to lease it for like a year. They were just hoping we would buy it kind of on a whim. And so that deal, and then another deal, but the other deal was also another kind of smaller deal. Not that 13,000 is small, but 13,000 with no parking and no yard it's just, it's like a house that has no setbacks. You know, it's like there's nowhere to move, you know. And so that was something that I learned there. So, you know, going into it, we always look at parking. We always look at, is there a potential for yard space? And then a big thing is just eave height and door height. So, you know, in industrial, a semi is going to be, I think top semi is 13.6, I think. So a 14-foot door will clear a semi unless it's like a cattle hauler or somebody hauling pods that has stacks on it. And so if you can get any kind of building, even if it's, say, a 5,000 square foot building, but it has 14-foot doors, then it opens up the amount of accessibility for other businesses to use it. If you have a flatbed pulling up and you have a forklift come in, then they can also unload it without hitting any rafters or anything like that. And so that was when I started realizing eave height and clearance is a really big deal, which I should have just known, but I just didn't think about it.
Yeah.
And then adequate parking. And then usually we're looking for about a 20/80 office warehouse split or 10/90. So like if a building is, like, for example, on that 70,000 square foot building we're buying next Monday, the office is 20. So hold on, it's 40 by 60. It's 2,400. Is that right? 2,400 square feet. But that's it. So there's 3 offices, and then there's just this massive warehouse with all cranes.
Wow.
But the thing about that is they're like, well, we need more offices. We're like, great. Well, we'll just take that back corner, block that in, block that door in, and you guys have 10 more offices right there. Or we'll build it all along the beams or where, you know, there's different ways to kind of get flexible with it. But if it's so office strong with a lower eave height, you're kind of just like, you're very limited to what you can use it for. So,
right. Yeah. That is so incredible. Like, just thinking through that and all the things, that's just not, I really have not been into any industrial real estate at all. So it's so fascinating. I wish that my partner was on here because she is getting into commercial, and I think she would have just loved to, I'll have to connect you guys at some point, but
yeah, we'll hop on a call.
Yeah, no, it's so neat to see just all the different things and how different like your buy box for an industrial building is versus like a single family home, or the things that you guys have to look at, which also leads me to think like how much time you guys have put into who you're leasing to, right? Like you guys probably have a really good idea of who you're going to lease this to or who you're going to seek out, as options, which is super fascinating to already have that, perspective in mind too, where obviously, that's pretty different from single family. It's just, it's so interesting, Jake. I'm loving this so much, this conversation, because it's like getting my brain working. I mean, as you know, I've been looking more towards multifamily, and small multifamily, and so it's like, but I know this like industrial space is something like my husband would probably be like all about, this is like,
I can see that. Just how you described him, I actually was like,
he's way more into this kind of stuff. He's, he's always like, can we buy another shop? And I'm like, do we need another shop? Like, can we, I mean, I guess you can, but it is very fascinating. And I think it's something that, he definitely has a lot more experience in that stuff, not so much in the investing side of it, but so it's really interesting just listening to all this. Like my brain is going so crazy. I'm like, oh my gosh, you could do this and this and this. And I'm like, yeah, look around, Rinda. Like there's industrial everywhere. You just haven't paid attention because you're focused on multifamily, or traditional real estate sales. So
that's so true. Because whenever I was doing mobile home parks only, whenever we were like, well, let's do industrial, I was like, man, is there even that much industrial
Yeah.
Is there even that much industrial around? You know, like I was like, I know where every park's at from here to 4 hours away.
Yeah.
And then I started driving and I'm like, I just never noticed. I don't know how, it's just the whole law of attraction thing, I guess. You know, like if you see a red Volkswagen Beetle, you see them everywhere. Whatever car you drive, you see it as soon as you buy it.
Yep,
You know?
100%. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
like, and now it's probably, the more majority of what you see, right? You look around and
Yeah.
you see all the industrial everywhere you go. But it's super interesting. I mean, it is do you feel like now that you're kind of involved and you've got a good swing of things, I mean, do you feel like do you feel like you're putting yourself into a bigger risk because of the purchase price, because of the, obviously the mortgage that you guys are covering and stuff? Do you feel like that, or do you feel like you've got a pretty great system in place that you're comfortable with what you're doing now?
I would say I'm ignorantly comfortable. So like,
Good.
I'm also naturally optimistic. So
Yeah.
I also feel better about deals because Sam is an engineer by trade, and Sam looks at everything. He's an optimistic person, but he looks at worst case scenario every which direction, and he will overthink it. And so I'll be like, this will work. Like I'll put a deal under contract, like this deal will work, and he'll be like, but if it doesn't, it would cost this much to all of us, and it would be this, it'd be devastating if this happened or whatever. And so we've kind of created a set criteria, just like you would on single family or multifamily, where you have a checklist while you're in due diligence that kind of helps counterbalance some of the risk in which we're taking. Vacancy will kill it. Will kill because we have to treat everything separate, right? So like industrial, is just its own standalone business, because we don't want to have like another part of the business funding that part, because then it starts being like, okay, well now we're taking this here, and it gets each business has to stand on its own legs. So like right now, with how much we bought and is under renovation that is currently vacant, I would say right now it is relatively risky, because our lease buildings can cover our non-lease buildings that are under, like the church. We bought that church I think I told you about, or maybe you just saw it on Facebook. But that deal, that's probably a 4-month to 5-month project. That was a big red iron building, post-tension slab, 30,000 square feet. And I put under contract, 120-day close, rezoned it with the city, tore the stage out, added 14-foot doors, tore the pastor's offices out, put 14-foot doors. It was built in the 80s. And it's heavy slab, post-tension, which post-tension just means you have cables running that keep your concrete tight from cracking, which is great for industrial. And so but that deal will sit, empty, could sit empty for 4 months. Let's just say worst case, 6 months while under construction. Average lease could take 6 to 8 months. So by the time we buy it to the time it turns a profit, could be a year and 3 months. Or someone could say day one after we buy it, they find out we buy it and they go, I just want it how it is. And so the timeline is so unpredictable. In a single family, it goes vacant and you go, let's rent it. It's rented in a couple of days. So your holding cost is eliminated for the most part. On this, we bought, it's the smallest building we bought, but it was 4,000 square feet, really nice building. Bought it for a good deal. I think we probably bought it half of what it's worth, or right at it. And we bought it September 27th. All I did was paint the exterior. Interior is really nice, but it's still vacant. Now we've started getting offers for people to buy it, which we could turn a good profit on it, but that's not really our model. Because we're just trying to stack up cash flow, to where by the time we're 35 to 40, we have a lot of flexibility to kind of pick and choose what we're doing. So, wait, what was the original question? I went off on a tangent.
No, you're good.
Just the criteria or the risk associated.
Yeah. But it's good. It is so helpful, even just to hear you, walking through some of it. It's super, super helpful. I mean, I know that people, it's almost like you work up this ladder in real estate investing, right? Like you're like, here's the comfort zone. I'm going to start with this, 2-1 single family type of thing, and then work my way up. So but it is interesting. It's so fascinating to hear like all the little things. So let's talk about valuation real fast. So what's the difference? Like, single family, obviously you have comps, right? It's pretty easy to comp that. It's pretty easy to comp rentals. Multifamily, you get a little bit, more into income, right? Like what kind of income is it bringing in and that kind of stuff. So what does it look like for creating like valuations on industrial?
Yeah. So we have it down pretty simple. So we can napkin math each deal while we're there and get pretty close to where our offer needs to be. A lot of times the leasing rate, so there's two sides of it. So you have your down payment, right? Which you have to have a return on your down payment. So like we treat that as like a PR. We're not raising money. It's our own money. We don't have investors on these deals. So we treat a percent of that money comes back to us each month, just as if we were borrowing the money from an investor, say 8, 10, 12, 14%, however we want to structure it. We usually set it at the same percentage per deal. And then you have your debt service on top of that. And we always run it as PITI, not interest only, even though we try and push for interest only for at least 2 years. But what we've done on the last 3 buildings is we bought them cash. And then as we've placed a tenant, we've refinanced. Reason being is, for example, we bought a building that was probably if it was just without the tenant appraised, it would be around 875, 900. Since we had that tenant signed on the lease prior to closing, the bank gave it an income approach on top of regular appraisal. So it appraised for 1.19.
Nice.
So by buying them cash, paying a return on the cash for time being, which is just an interest only percentage, placing a tenant, then when we go to refinance them, we can either pull more money if we need to. We don't usually because we want to keep the cash flow, but we can get our money back and put it to more deals. Now, on the flip side of it, the income side is we just need to know lease rates for the area really well. Now, in industrial, the larger the building goes, the lower the lease rate goes. So like, if you have a 4,000 square foot building, it may lease at $13 a foot or $14 a foot. But if you have a 70,000 square foot building, it's more $3.50 or $4 a foot. Because, I'm ballpark math and I'm probably way off here, but if you're at 4,000 square feet at $10 a foot, it's 4,000 a month. Is that right? That should be simple math. Yeah. 3,600. I don't remember. But if it's 70,000 at, $3 or $4 a foot, it could be, I'm not even gonna be close to this, but it could be $23,000 or $25,000 a month, something like that. So as the building grows in size, your lease rate decreases.
That makes sense.
But where that plays in is like, because sometimes guys will be like, oh, I bought that building. I bought it for, $70 a foot. And you could buy a building for $70 a foot that is a smaller building with a really high lease rate. But if you pay that on a larger building with a lower lease rate, you may get caught. And so we had like a fund reach out to us, and they were asking, I went to lunch with these guys, and great guys, but all they do is they analyze industrial deals, like kind of suit and tie guys. They run it all through spreadsheets. We don't really build it into spreadsheets. Maybe we should, but we look at it. We can factor in the debt, and then we can factor in lease rate. And as long as that's making enough money for us, and we always factor in the lease rate on the low end, and we factor in worst case scenario on the debt end. And as long as it still meets our cash flow, what we're looking for on a property, then we'll do the deal. So these guys kept asking me and Will, they were like, what's y'all's IRRs on your deal? And we were like, I was like, Will, do you know our IRRs? And he was like, I don't know. And they were like, well, we always target for 8. Like, they were like, we always want 8 to 10 IRR. I was like, all right. So they were like, let us know what your last deal was. We're just kind of curious where your numbers coming in at. So we looked over our last 3 deals, and we were averaging 55 or 48 to 55 on IRRs. And we sent it to them, and they were like, holy cow. But you guys are like, and what it is like they were syndicating, right? So they were building in fees.
Yep.
And they never saw any of the buildings. And so I think you're at a large disadvantage if you're not meeting with the sellers. So like these guys were phone calls. Hey, we'll do this number. It meets this. we have a 7-year raise or a 7-year cycle. We have to dump this thing by year 5 or 6. And as long as we can make, 7 to 9% on our money, our investors are happy. We get our fees to ourselves and everyone's happy. And we're just like, that'll never be our style. Like, we'll never be in suit and ties running spreadsheets. Maybe later in our life, if this thing gets big enough, we'll have guys doing that. Maybe we'll play that game just to take a back seat. But it's just like, we've got to avoid it. like we were just like, it makes more than our mortgage. And it sounds bad, but it's worked well. So,
but it's also, yeah, but like bootstrapping, and getting out there with the sellers. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you create a different, like me, I love mom and pop multifamily for that reason. Exactly. Cause I love getting on the phones and talking and building relationships with these. I love 80-year-olds. Like, I love elderly, getting, like, hearing the story and the journey of this building. And I'm like, this is amazing. Like, I'd love to carry this on, and treat it how you've treated it over the last 40 years or whatever. So it's really a neat thing that you have, because it is unique in that way, right? That maybe a lot of the players in the industrial space are, are funds, or they are bigger buyers and that kind of stuff. But so generally speaking, are you just focused on the Tulsa area, or where? Tell us a little bit about your particular buy box. So if somebody does ever come across this podcast and they find something for you, send something to you.
So right now I'm looking nationwide. Cool. Now, Tulsa is obviously easier just because of proximity. So that's where phone call. That's where the majority of our deals that we bought are within an hour and a half to 2 hours of Tulsa right now. Part of that was we wanted to just have our hands on it as we were getting into the game and learning it. But I would love to buy stuff in other states. One of my long-term plans is I would love to have a plane, jump on it, go meet with a seller, Tuesday at 10 o'clock, be back at the house at 3 or 4, have an offer in hand or have a signed contract, kind of go along those lines. And so right now, like, me and Sam just decided, I guess when we first started doing it, we're just like, we'll buy anywhere. And I actually had a Facebook post where it was like when we first started looking for deals. This was like January 23. And someone was like, hey, would you guys buy one? And it was like Louisiana or something. And I said, no, I think we're just going to stick to Tulsa. And Sam responds to my comment. He's like, we'll buy anywhere. And, and I'm like, oh yeah. No, never mind. We'll buy anywhere. So it's funny because everyone knows that's my business partner too. And he was like, no, send it, And I was like, I don't know why I didn't think about we could buy it. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
So, and one of the guys that we've kind of looked up to, he's an older gentleman. He pretty much only does industrial, and the majority of his stuff, he lives in Tulsa. The majority of his stuff is out of state, but he builds 150 to 200,000 square foot ish complexes or larger, and
wow.
And but he leases them before they're done getting built. So that's a game I would love to play in the next 2 to 3 years. But it's the same thing like you were saying though on the multifamily with the older generation. Most of my friends are over 60, and that's how I grew up. And so I get along with some people my age. I don't have like anybody I don't like, but I get along better with an older generation. And so a lot of the sellers are in that criteria. There's a large changeover happening right now nationwide, from service businesses to buildings to even houses. Mm-hmm. And, private equity is eating up a lot of it. And I think those guys, they're like, we had a seller, this happened on a deal. I had a seller, I was a lower offer, but he liked me more.
Yep.
And part of it was just like, and he actually told me, he was like, you guys just give me hope for the next generation, because no one your age is actually working. And like they're in their head. Now, most likely they're comparing it to guys that worked in their fab shop or worked in their, in their, like this guy, I forget what the company was. It wasn't a fab shop, but, he probably had a couple guys that just love smoking weed and leaving work, so he probably didn't have a great example of guys my age. Cause I'm like, I don't have any buddies that are lazy. I'm like, I don't have anybody that doesn't own their, like, none of my buddies don't have their own businesses. I'm like, and I just don't think, that older generation sees those guys as much because they're working. And But that was the same thing, because those guys I get along with so well, because my grandpa, I grew up with my grandpa. That was my last post, that I think you may have seen it.
Yes.
And so he's 81 now, but I spent every weekend. I lived with him growing up. Spent every weekend with him, and so I can talk with that class of individual really well. Where I have to get careful is that I can't let it be a limiting belief that like the good old boy, like meeting with those guys is the only reason that we're successful. Because I'm going to come across a salesman that's completely opposite, or not a salesman. I'm going to come across a seller that's completely opposite from that avatar. And then it's just going to be about industry knowledge and being able to talk it. Because I'm not going to be able to relate to everybody like that.
Sure.
Around here, I can relate. If a guy's over 70 years old, ran a business in it, owns the building, I'm best friends immediately. I'm like, that's my crowd. But
yeah.
Multifamily, are you seeing that a lot on the multifamily side as well?
As far as what?
It's just the same kind of like a similar avatar of kind of a change of hands, older generation, their kids don't want to take it over.
In the mom and pop space, yeah. In the, the lower units, like the 20s, 20s to 50s and stuff, you're definitely seeing that, and definitely the smaller stuff. A lot of sellers I've been talking to are that's exactly what they don't have good books. It's very much mom and pop. And, but I hear a lot of reservations because of that. I think that generation just, they coming out of certain things they had to go through. They definitely, I would say, were very hard workers and had to do some pretty crazy things at times. So it is interesting. So when you get on the phone with them, I hear a lot of feedback of like, wow, you actually took the time to have the conversations with us, or you actually like are willing to talk about the weather, and I'm like, all day, every day, let's talk about the weather. Like, what's it doing there? How's your mom? That kind of stuff. I just love people. And so I love having those conversations with them. But I do hear that feedback quite often is, they're getting hammered with, calls and letters and all these things, and that generation just still really wants the connection with people, and they want to know that what they're selling is going to people who are going to take good care of it and are hard workers. And so I think it does benefit you tremendously spending the time to have those conversations with them, and let them feel comfortable. Like you said, you guys had a lower offer, but because of who you were and because you took the time with the seller, like it mattered. So and there are certainly just those type of people that are like, we are not going to sell to a hedge fund. We are not, and
it's very common.
It's just, it is what it is. So, this has been so great. I feel like I kept you quite, a little longer than.
Oh, you're good. I didn't realize I talked this much. I'm sorry. I probably talked to you.
No, it's so good. I almost feel like I could, I needed to maybe check back in with you in 6 months and just do like a follow-up and see where you're at, and see what else you guys have accomplished from here till then. So that would be really cool. And I'll keep following you on this goal you have of yours, this 100,000 passive income. Like, that's pretty sweet. So remind me of this
statement.
Yeah. But you don't have kids, right? Are you?
No,
I
have a girlfriend. I'm not married, but don't have kids.
Okay.
I'm 29. Will's 29. We're only a month apart. He's not married. Sam's 35. He's not married. So that's kind of we're going to figure out how to slow that down a little bit. Because we all have girlfriends, and I think everyone wants to get married, but we work a ton. So I would say probably an unhealthy amount currently, but
you're like, been up since 1 a.m. I'm like, wow. But I mean, and I get it. I get the hustle too. But that is interesting. But what happens too when you have kids is it's almost like you need that slow down time, but then you also have such a deeper desire for doing greater and bigger things, because you now have this greatest gift of your life that like is relying on you, or you want to do better and pass stuff on to. So it's quite interesting. You're like, I'm going to slow down in some ways, and then I'm going to like ramp up in other ways, because I have these, people depending on me now. So, but
that's something that I've noticed about you just in some of the conversations is you always light up when you talk about your kids. Like, even if it's on the phone, I can tell the tone difference. I'm like, and that to me, that's really cool. Like, I'm like, that's something I want. So
Except for if you were in my house today, I did get let's see, makeup and markers all over my brand new couch. But I
Yeah.
text my husband and I said, "Here's how my Monday morning's going. I hope yours is going better." He's like, "I told you we shouldn't have bought a more expensive couch." And I'm like, "Okay, yeah, fine." We will miss these days one day.
Absolutely.
I'm like, right now the patience is being tested, but
Yeah.
we will miss these days, guaranteed. I'll be like one day, wish those kids would come back home and ride on my couch, you
Yeah.
know?
It's
So
kind of the all messes make a good story.
yeah.
So,
Anywho, so thank you so much, Jake. I so
yeah.
appreciate your time.
Well, thank
I'll
you.
get this up, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of people who will enjoy it. So thank you so much. And I will check back in with you 6 months or so down the line and just see if we can get back on and do a follow up to this.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on, and thanks for putting it together. And sorry I had to reschedule on you twice. So, but yeah, I really appreciate it. And yeah, let's do it again. Stay in touch.